Forensics in the classroom.
What is it? What is blood stain pattern analysis? It's the examination of the shapes, locations, and distribution of blood stains in order to provide an interpretation of the events which gave rise to their origin.
Detectives use many techniques to solve murder mysteries. When events get brutal, one calls the blood spatter expert, who, by looking at the patterns, can decipher the events that transpired.
A blood splatter expert will be called in if someone would get hit by a bat or killed with a gun.
We're going to learn a little bit about how these different patterns can tell us about what weapon was used, what angle the weapon may have been used at, how the victim fell, all these different details.
And of course, this is based on the idea that all patterns are characteristics of the forces which created them, which means if you have like a little globe of blood here and maybe you're doing an experiment, if you hit it with a bat, right? No matter how many times you hit it with a bat, if you hit it in the same way, with the same amount of force, in the same direction, you're going to get the same pattern.
What can blood spatter tell us?
So it may just look like a glob of blood or a splatter of a blood. We can actually measure the width and the height of blood spots to determine the height they were dropped at and the angle they were dropped at, and also the surface they were dropped on.
The size of the droplets indicate how the blood fell from the victim.
The speed of the impact makes a difference. So if you have something that's kind of low velocity, usually you have bigger drops, but something that's really high velocity, like a gunshot, leaves kind of a spray of lots of little drops, okay? And the angle of impact also makes a difference.
The height from which a blood drop falls affects how big it is when it hits the ground.
7 feet, it has a pretty wide diameter, versus when it drops from 6 inches, it's a pretty small diameter.
The angle at which the blood drop determines the shape of the splatter.
Different angles of impact. Okay, so a 90-degree angle is perfectly circular. That's if I dropped a blood just like this onto the floor. So what do you guys notice happens as we start to increase the angle? Sort of longer and more oval shape, right? Another thing that we can look at when we look at blood splatter is the point of convergence, or the place where the blood splatter originated. We can measure the width and the height of each of these drops, like this, and we can draw lines from the longest side, okay? And where they all meet together is called the point of convergence, okay? So that's where we can figure out where that blood spatter came from.
Movement.
Okay, the movement of the victim and the assailant. You can tell if someone was being chased around the room or if they remained on the floor.
The swipe was like just rubbing your hand against the wall. Wipe was when you wiped your hand against the wall when there was already blood there.
The blood drop hits the surface, and if it hits at enough speed, you get those little microsatellite spatters. This can tell you about the direction, all right, the direction from where the blood came.
Yeah, you can find the direction and the way the blood lands on a specific thing. Mostly it could be like on a wall, and it could be in droplets, and it can be how measured it is in degrees, and it could have a tail and see how long the tail was.
Say if somebody had a knife or something and they like slashed one way, like the tail would be coming like the less, like it would start going together, so it would look like whole one, but it'll start getting into dots during the beginning, and at the end it'll be together.
So you have your parent drop, which is the bigger one, and the wave cast-offs, which means what? What does this tell you about direction? So the tail of the elongated stain points in the direction of travel.
The students discovered for themselves how blood spatter behaves.
Yeah, I'm having lots of fun here. It's fun learning about like the crime scenes and how you would have to put all the details together.
A crime scene tells a story, but the case cannot be solved unless someone can read the clues. Class dismissed.